Chapter 4. The Final Stand. The night was eerily quiet as the survivors waited for the inevitable. The air was thick with tension, the fear almost palpable. Sarah stood at the wall, her rifle in hand, her eyes fixed on the approaching horde. "They're almost here," Tom said, his voice tight with dread. "What's the plan?" "We hold them off as long as we can," Sarah replied, her voice firm. "We can't let them breach the walls." "And if they do?" Maria asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Then we fight," Sarah said, meeting her gaze. "We fight with everything we've got." The first zombies reached the walls, their decaying hands clawing at the barriers. The guards opened fire, bullets and arrows finding their marks. The front ranks of the horde fell, but more kept coming, relentless in their pursuit of flesh. The battle raged through the night, the walls shaking with the force of the onslaught. The survivors fought with desperation, knowing that their lives depended on holding the line. But the horde was too vast, too powerful. Slowly, inexorably, they began to breach the walls. The survivors fell back, retreating to the inner defenses. But the zombies were everywhere, swarming over the barriers, tearing through anything in their path. Sarah fought with everything she had, her rifle spitting out rounds until it clicked empty. She grabbed a machete and continued the fight, slashing at the undead as they closed in around her. But for every zombie she took down, it seemed like two more took its place. "Fall back," Tom shouted, his voice barely audible over the din of battle. "To the command center." The survivors retreated to the last line of defense, the fortified command center at the heart of the fort. The doors were slammed shut and barricaded as the zombies pounded on them from the outside. Inside, the survivors huddled together, their faces pale with fear. Sarah stood at the front, her machete still in hand, ready to make her last stand. "We're not going to make it, are we?" Elena asked, her voice trembling. Sarah looked at her, seeing the terror in her eyes. She wanted to reassure her, to tell her that everything would be okay. But she couldn't lie. "I don't know," she said quietly, "but we're going to fight until the end." The pounding on the doors grew louder, the wood splintering under the force of the horde. The survivors gripped their weapons, ready to face the inevitable. But just as the doors began to give way, there was a sudden, deafening explosion. The ground shook, and the sound of the zombies' growls was drowned out by the roar of fire. Sarah looked up in shock as the doors burst open, not from the zombies, but from the force of the explosion. The horde was engulfed in flames, the fire spreading rapidly through their ranks, burning them to ash. "What the hell?" Tom began, but his words were cut off by the sound of approaching helicopters. Sarah ran to the window and looked out. To her amazement, she saw a convoy of military helicopters descending on the fort, soldiers rappelling down and opening fire on the remaining zombies. "We're saved," Maria whispered, tears of relief streaming down her face. The soldiers quickly mopped up the rest of the horde, clearing the fort of the undead. Sarah watched in stunned silence as the last zombie fell, the nightmare finally over. A soldier approached the command center, his face grim but determined. "Is everyone all right in here?" "We are now," Sarah said, her voice hoarse with exhaustion. "We've been tracking that horde for weeks," the soldier explained. "When we saw they were heading for your fort, we knew we had to intervene. You're lucky we got here when we did." "Thank you," Sarah said, her relief overwhelming. "You saved us." The soldier nodded, then gestured to his men. "Let's get you all out of here. There's a safe zone about 50 miles north. We'll take you there." As the survivors were led to the helicopters, Sarah took one last look at the fort. It had been their home for so long, their last bastion against the horrors of the world. But now, it was time to leave it behind. As they lifted off, Sarah felt a sense of peace wash over her. The fight was over, and they had survived. There would be more challenges ahead, more battles to fight. But for now, they were safe, and that was enough.